Does momentum transition from season to season? Mark Rogers TV previewing teams across the country, including the Oklahoma Sooners, coming off that huge Sugar Bowl win. Momentum all over the place from 11-2's finish in 2013. And we bring in Matt Hofeld of Crimson and Creme Machine to talk about the Sooners, who have already locked in on 2 or 3 practices at this point. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Wow, this is a preseason number 3. So I'm going to give you the broad national perspective on this from my standpoint, and then you can really dig in on the nuts and bolts. This team was like a top 15, top 20 team most of last season. Really, the offense looked really bad in that Baylor loss on the road in Waco. It wasn't so much the defense, in my view. It was the offense that just couldn't get anything done in that game. The Bedlam game seemed like a bit of a steal. They made some special plays in the kicking game and elsewhere late in that game to pull it out. Then they go into Sugar Bowl against Alabama, the huge underdog, pull off the stunner. Do you think that game is carrying too much weight in regards to that number 3 preseason ranking, or do you think this is pretty legit and people should be excited?
No, I think definitely Oklahoma is ranked based off of their last game. That win over Alabama in the Sugar Bowl has carried momentum for this team. When you look at what happened on National Signing Day, getting in some guys that they weren't really in on before the Sugar Bowl win, Oklahoma had a great recruiting class that they signed back in February. A lot of that was attributed to the Sugar Bowl win. Coaches talked about how that was their drive throughout the summer workouts, but now they're changing their tone a little bit, saying last year was last year. And when you hear the coaches talk, a lot of coaches met with the media yesterday, and a lot of them were saying we've got to earn our stripes. We've got to prove this year, and we can't carry last year into the 2014 season. So I think yes, I think they're being rated number 3 because of what they did in the Sugar Bowl. But then you look at the rankings, and Alabama's ranked ahead of Oklahoma. So Oklahoma could even have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, even though they're ranked number 3, which a lot of people would say is, and you can legitimately make an argument that at number 3 they are ranked higher than they need to be. That said, they can still have a chip on their shoulder to see Alabama ranked ahead of them. I would say, just as an Oklahoma fan first, I'm excited that they're number 3. But then as a guy who covers the team and analyzes things, there's a lot of question marks on this team, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, for them to garner a number 3 ranking.
Yeah, and you mentioned the good and the bad almost in one statement there, because much of this hype and attention centers around the performance of Trevor Knight in the Sugar Bowl, 348 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He looked amazing. Just based on the Trevor Knight that I saw a few times last season before the Sugar Bowl, he looked so confident delivering the ball against one of the best defenses in the country. So Trevor Knight, 9 touchdowns, 5 picks, a bit inconsistent throughout the year, and it's amazing to see where this Oklahoma quarterback position has gone in the span of 1 year with nobody graduating and moving on. Just kind of take us from where it was a year ago versus where we stand now, and how comfortable you feel with not just with Trevor Knight, but the reinforcements.
Well, a year ago at this time, you had a 3-way battle between Trevor Knight, Kendall Thompson, and Blake Bell for the starting job. Kendall Thompson was injured very early in summer camp, essentially making it a 2-way battle. A lot of people were shocked to see Trevor Knight win this competition. And you got to remember, Blake Bell kind of was a folk hero before he was anything else, coming in and running that belldozer package, but he had never really consistently thrown the football. And so a lot of people just assumed that based off of his status as the hero of the Bedlam game and so forth, that he was going to be the guy to win this job. But coaches and players alike just raved about Trevor Knight's athleticism and his ability to make plays. Unfortunately, as the 2013 season unfolded, we didn't see a lot of those plays. His debut against Louisiana Monroe was questionable at best, was having really a terrible game against West Virginia when he left with injury. And there is the big question mark when it comes to Trevor Knight. We saw his upside in the Sugar Bowl game. We saw what Trevor Knight is capable of doing. I had a post up earlier in the week about just a preview in which I said that Trevor Knight has to stay healthy. And that's the big question mark. He left the West Virginia game injured. He left Oklahoma State injured. And those are things that a guy that Oklahoma's putting so much stock in, it just can't happen. And especially when you look at the depth now, Blake Bell is tight end. Bob Stoops said yesterday that he wouldn't be surprised if Blake Bell opened as the starting tight end against Louisiana Tech on August 30th. So Blake Bell is entrenched at the tight end position. Kendall Thompson is in Utah. And behind Trevor Knight right now, you've got two guys who have never played. You've got a true freshman in Cody Thomas, and you got a redshirt freshman in Cody Thomas, and you got a true freshman in Justice Hanson. The wild card here is Oklahoma has a transfer from Texas Tech, Baker Mayfield, who started several games last year for the Red Raiders, was the Big 12 Freshman Player of the Year. Offensively, I mean, just had a lot going for him. He was a walk-on at Tech, chose to come to Oklahoma. A lot's going on right now and trying to get a waiver to get him immediately eligible to play in 2014. If Baker Mayfield is ruled eligible, which, again, they think there's a significant chance because of his walk-on status that he can play, that really changes a lot of things. You can do more with Trevor Knight because you're not so worried about risking injury. But if Baker Mayfield's not eligible and you got two freshmen behind him, you probably see a lot different with Trevor Knight trying to keep him safe and keep him healthy, which means that they won't be running the full package that they ran where they're rolling him out and letting him scramble that they got Alabama on.
Now, the most recent important storyline involves Joe Mixon, the big get in the offseason at running back. And so do we know anything more specific about the Joe Mixon situation, termed right now, I believe, as indefinitely dismissed from the team?
Well, no, he's not dismissed from the team. He's being, due to school policy, he's being withheld from team activities. He's there on campus. He's in the dorms. He just can't participate in team activities until some sort of resolve comes to this situation. There's no new news to report based off of last week. The police department said they expect maybe at the end of this coming week, to determine whether they'll file charges against him or not. It could be anything from a misdemeanor to a felony. If they do file charges, Mixon's lawyer continues to say that Joe did nothing wrong, and he's excited to wait to see for the investigation to see how things turn out and for the truth to come to light. This is a crazy, crazy story. Everything from the time it broke, we had a couple of sources within the police department that I was able to speak to on the Friday night on July 25th that this story began to come to light. I was getting a lot of good information, and then all of a sudden, all the police sources have dried up, and obviously that's something that's being taken care of within the department. But the girl, she left to go back to Texas. Apparently, she had surgery, but the video, there is a video of this incident, and that video was going to be either the death sentence for Joe Mixon or his liberation. I think if you just ask me, if you made me wager right now, I think there's 0% chance that Joe Mixon plays football for Oklahoma this coming season. I think if it's a misdemeanor, a charge, then he's probably going to still serve a full season suspension. I think Bob Stoops is going to say, hey, man, sit on the shelf, keep your nose clean, work hard with the team, and show us that you can come back and earn your stripes. I think if this is a felony charge, there's no way he stays in school at Oklahoma. I think he's gone.
Well, that's too bad. That's too bad. Another incident with a talented football player making a bad.
He's an incredibly talented kid, but again, you got to look at he's a kid who's never played a down of football for OU. One of our other writers and I were talking about this last week. If he's going to have something like this happen, you really rather it happen now rather than after he started playing football for OU and the team is counting on him. But don't overlook the fact that Oklahoma's still got a lot of talent at running back. I mean, it's not like that they have to go try to find someone to hand the ball off to. There's some guys on this depth chart that are good guys, talented guys, speedsters, and playmakers.
And let's talk about the running back situation because Keith Ford was a guy that we saw plenty last season, but there's also some other guys in the mix as well.
Well, Keith Ford is a guy that a lot of people, including myself, expect to be the Game 1 starter against Louisiana Tech. He'll be a true sophomore. He's a kid he's a powerful kid. He's a straight-up runner that really doesn't try to dodge contact. He's one of those punishing runners that if you're going to hit him, you're going to take a hit as well. Problem last year as a true freshman is he had a little bit of a fumbleitis tendencies, and that limited his carry, especially when you had guys like Brennan Clay, who were seasoned veterans at senior leadership ahead of him on the depth chart. Oklahoma's going to rely a lot on Keith Ford this year, but he's going to have to take care of the football. The other guy to keep an eye on is a redshirt sophomore from Jinx, Oklahoma, by the name of Alex Ross, a speedster-type guy. Bob Stoops hinted yesterday in his interviews that Ross may end up being a guy that even does kickoff returns because of his speed. Those are the two guys that that really are probably going to be the two starters in that game against Louisiana Tech. Then there's another freshman, the guy, we call him the other running back at Oklahoma, that came in with his freshman class. And his name is, it just depends on who you talk to, okay, as far as how you pronounce this kid's name. But Samjay Perini is my best understanding, and I'm probably wrong. But he's really has made a lot of waves in the summer workouts. Coaches have raved about him, about his strength, about his speed. And I think as a true freshman, he's probably going to get some playing time as well. So Oklahoma comes in with guys who have been in the program with Ford and Ross, but guys who really haven't. They've been limited in their actual game carries. So that's going to be one of the things to watch in this offense. It goes back to where they deserve the number 3 ranking. You know, you got a lot of question marks and as who's going to carry the football for Oklahoma.
Kind of the state of college football, Matt, off the field. Unfortunately, we go from the Joe Mixon situation to another very talented, freakish athlete in Dorial Green-Beckham, who's produced at this level, at a very high level at Missouri, who goes to Oklahoma, and we all assumed that he wasn't going to see the field until 2015, but that might not necessarily be the case.
No, there's actually a legitimate chance that DGB will play for Oklahoma this fall, and it's a crazy deal. Missouri is actually working with Oklahoma. Last week they were waiting on one more piece of paperwork from Missouri to appeal for a waiver for him. The coaches are very high on the idea of him playing immediately at the University of Oklahoma. He was obviously a big subject of conversation yesterday at Media Day, and the coaches never backed away from their expectations of him. They expect him to be a guy who played, they continue to say, a guy who plays for the University of Oklahoma. And you got to keep in mind that this kid is actually going to be eligible for the NFL draft after this season. And he's proven enough from what he did at Missouri that he can actually go into the NFL draft and be drafted. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the hands to be a prototypical NFL receiver. So the Sooners are expecting him to contribute, and you get the feeling that they don't expect him to contribute in 2015. They expect him to contribute this year. And I think it says a lot that Missouri is actually helping with getting this kid back on track. Interesting thing to see here. You've got DGB, and the loophole there seems to be the fact that he was dismissed from the team, and that's what could get him eligible this year. But you got DGB basically getting kicked out of Missouri, and the University of Missouri helping a scholarship athlete play at another school. And then you've got a walk-on transfer from Texas Tech who just got beat out in a quarterback battle and wants to go somewhere else. He'd grown up an Oklahoma fan, and Texas Tech won't do squat to help a walk-on transfer guy. I mean, it's crazy how college football works out and how some universities are able to help out, some universities are not. I guess you could say the difference is Missouri won't be playing against DGB because they're in the SEC, and Texas Tech potentially could be playing against Baker Mayfield. So maybe that has a lot to do with it as well.
I'm sure it does. And if DGB can be on the field for Trevor Knight, some
Absolutely.
of his accuracy issues go away because he's a toss it up and let him jump up and go get it and outfight defenders for the football kind of guy. He's really,
certainly a game changer.
Yeah, he's a game changer, no question. And I think Oklahoma had a number of receivers 4, 5, 6 years ago here in the last decade, but maybe nobody recent that could compare to him. And talking about a guy that can change a game and has the physical stature to play the position that way. Right. Let's talk about the defense in regards to the expectations there. It could be really special. You've got a good linebacking core, a lot of returning starters there, and then the speed coming off the edge is exciting as well.
Yeah, I think everything with his defense starts up front in the defensive line. One of the guys that you alluded to off the edge is going to be defensive end Charles Tapper. And then the other guy is going to be Eric Stryker, linebacker, who is a pass rushing specialist. These two guys are going to wreak havoc in the backfield this year, just simply because of their speed coming off the snap. These are the two guys who really assaulted A.J. McCarron in the Sugar Bowl. Even before that, they came out big in the Bedlam game. You talked about that game where Oklahoma had to really put a lot of things together to win in Stillwater, and they did a lot in part to what this defense did, particularly Tapper and Stryker. These two guys are going to be pass rushing specialists, third and long. You know they're going to come, and Oklahoma's going to line them up on opposite sides. And that way you have to choose. You're going to have to slide protect against one of them. That means the other one's most likely going to be in the backfield. Oklahoma's added another guy, junior college transfer linebacker named Devontae Bond, who is a prototypical Eric Stryker type guy. He's a little bit bigger and thicker in that he can provide more in the area of run support, but he's just as quick, looking at his game film from JUCO, just as quick coming off the line, coming off the edge, and again a sack specialist. So can you imagine having Eric Stryker and Charles Tapper on one side of the field, and then on the other side you got a guy like Devontae Bond? I mean, Oklahoma's going to have a heyday on third and long. If you're an offense playing the Sooners, you want to avoid this type of situation. Beyond that, you got Jordan Phillips, a defensive tackle who was injured with a back injury early in the season and missed the majority of 2013. He's back. He's an All-American type guy that can kind of plug up the middle, and you probably have one of the best, if not the best, linebacking core in the Big 12. With, like we already mentioned, Stryker, you've got Dominique Alexander, you got Frank Shannon. Great group of linebackers. The front seven in Oklahoma is very, very strong. Altogether, this defense has 9 returning starters from 2013, and that's a group that really began to gel. And you go back to that Bedlam game, you think about the goal line stance, which I believe was the game changer when Sooners were able to keep Oklahoma State out of the end zone 4 downs in a row. This defense is older now. They're a little bit more mature. They said yesterday, Bob Stoops says we're bigger, faster, stronger than we were a year ago. Dominique Alexander talked about being a freshman last year to being a sophomore this year. The difference is what he knows in the system. Now he can play faster. He doesn't have to think as much because he knows the system better. And the question mark you got to look at is cornerback spot. You lose Aaron Colvin. Looks like possibly nickelback Julian Wilson is going to transfer over and take that spot. But then you also lose a safety in Gabe Lynn that you got to replace. There's guys there, but like the running backs and the receivers on offense, these guys are unproven, a little bit untested. But I'd rather have 2 guys on defense untested than what Oklahoma's got with receivers and running backs on the offensive side of the ball. This defense is going to be really, really good in 2014.
Yeah, Stryker, seeing him for the first time in a full game against Texas and then watching him against Alabama, and again, you mentioned Charles Tapper as well coming off the edge in the predicament that places the offensive protection in. I just thought, how does this kid finish the season with 6.5 sacks? He's such a freak and he's so phenomenal. Looks like he could get 3 sacks a game. When you break it down unit by unit, and I know that you know the personnel so well, you could point to some issues like you just did at cornerback and some specific areas of concern that are very, very honed in on a particular player. But man, if you go unit by unit, if Trevor Knight can just maintain some consistency, right, and if DGB's on the field, wow, they are solid everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think if just go back to DGB. If he's eligible to play in 2014, this is a national championship contending team. They deserve to be number 3. I mean, I don't think you can argue against it. At this point, you can point out to all the question marks on running back and receiver, but DGB answers a lot of that. The offensive line is going to be solid for Oklahoma. When we did our Big 12 position rankings, offensive line was the only position we gave the Sooners as the #1 ranking in the conference because there's a lot of starts there, a lot of returning starters. They're going to be good, but you have question marks all around them. Absolutely. If you add DGB, this offense takes on a different type of caliber as far as their offensive threat. The defense is there. The defense is going to be one of those defenses that can really keep you in games and even push you over the top. You talked about Eric Stryker and just that Texas game, and that's when he kind of came to the forefront. He had the big hit on McCoy that honestly, and you go back and you look at the film, I know this sounds like sour grapes. There's no way that's a penalty. The video replay can prove that, but still, he's just capable of that day in and day out. And the difference, what you said, was the guy was young. He's a freshman, and now he's maturing. He's growing physically. He's getting mentally stronger in the game. Look what he did against Notre Dame, in that first offensive series. He hits the quarterback, and next thing you know, the Sooners have a defensive score because of what he's capable of doing. This defense, I would take him as one of the top units in the nation. Offense, like you said, you got to answer some questions there, and DGB could be that main answer.
I'm going to have to redo my top 10 positional rankings in the nation at linebacker. I had Stryker, I don't know, I had him around 4 or 5. I might have to raise him a little bit higher than that. The ceiling is just so high for that kid. All right, folks, Matt Hofeld of Crimson and Cream Machine. Matt, you bring it every time for us. We appreciate it. We're all set, I think. We've got our overview on Oklahoma football, and it's fun to hear the personal breakdown. Always appreciate the time. Before we let you go, what are you working on right now? What can we look forward to?
Well, actually, tonight we've got our first Sooner Nation podcast coming up. We'll have the voice of the Sooners. Toby Rowland's going to be on with us. You can catch that at crimsonandcreammachine.com starting 6:30 local time. If you catch this video later on in the week, it'll still be on our website. You can go back and you can look at it. A lot of preview stuff coming out this week. We're going down to positions. We already did quarterbacks. We'll do the rest of the offense this week at crimsonandcreammachine.com. And one of our writers, was one of the things we started this interview out with. One of our writers is working on a post about Oklahoma being overranked. Over the last since 2000, where did they start out ranked and where did they end up ranked? And is Oklahoma really that perennial overranked team that some people think they are? That's going to be an interesting post you're going to want to check out this week at crimsonandcreammachine.com.
I love that kind of stuff. Anytime you go back into the archives and start to put together rankings and records and conference comparisons, all that kind of stuff, and specifically honing in on Oklahoma, the preseason rank versus, because a lot of people, and I don't know if this is truth, think that in Oklahoma, Ohio State, Alabama, we see it get that extra nod in the preseason rankings, and maybe they don't always live up to those expectations. So that will be interesting, and I will definitely give that a look. Matt, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate, again, the information, the insight, the personnel breakdown.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man. Anytime.